All right, guys, we're back again. We just finished week 5 of the Gridiron 7-on-7 League, going into week 6, last week of the season. This year, Gridiron Report. I'm Tone Colston. Excited, to not really finish the season. It's actually been a really fun season this year. Not many issues, good teams, good kids, coaches did a great job. Parents, families, all y'all did a great job. It's just been fun this year, and every year has its little perks. We have some really great teams. Sometimes we have some issues that we deal with or whatever, but, overall, this year's been one of our best years. I get on here and rant a few times here about a couple of little things here and there, but I think the gameplay, the respect, the things that mean the most to keeping this thing rolling and trying to finish this thing off with a great ending has been done well. So I appreciate you guys. 7-on-7's a beast sometimes. I think the toughest part of this is just getting the schedule out this year. Next year, if you guys have multiple teams, please find you a couple extra coaches if you can and make that happen. But, overall, like I said, I think we had a great year. We're going into this last week. Week 6 is, I try to get it in at some point in the season. Early in the season, we didn't get to 3 games at a time like we try to. So we finally got everybody out of the way on the playoff in the games that's been played. So what we do, at least once a season, normally week 5 or 6, is we do what I call a matchup week. So we take all the top teams, both divisions or one division, depending on what age group we're in, and we put the top teams versus each other, and we put the teams at the bottom versus each other, because when you get to the playoff, it's staggered, best versus worst, best versus worst. So we want to see the best teams play, get some of the best action, and we're at the end of the season, so everybody should be kind of rolling at their best and moving through. So week 6, matchup weekend, high school division, we'll have our top, I think, 5 teams, playing against each other, and then the other groups. High school division will be split. We'll have half the league at Anderson County, half the league on the turf at Clinton. So should be good to go. Same deal with the U teams and the JV and the varsity teams. We're going to take the top of the bracket, put those guys against each other, the lower bottom part of the bracket, and put those guys against each other. You're really fighting to, kind of get the placing and the seeding for the playoffs and, to see how you can finish. Other than that, let's go ahead and get to the action. Let's go ahead and talk about it and get it rolling. We always have our top teams of the week for our high school division. So let's talk about them. We had 3 teams go 2-1, or two 2-1 teams. So we had the Kentucky Raptors, Team Mayhem. Both those teams went 2-1. Then we had another team went 3-1, which is Clinton. Clinton's had some big weekends. 2-0, 3-0. This weekend, got them an extra game in there because they're kind of behind on the numbers on the game. So they're 3-1. Took their first loss of the season. I can't remember off the top of my head who they lost to, but maybe we'll catch that on the end when we're talking about the standings and all the stats and stuff. But also another big weekend. Code Blue, just started the league a couple weeks ago, so they had 4 games this weekend, 4-0. Dominating their competition. Had a couple close games. I think they've had 1 loss a couple weeks ago. I can't remember who that one is either. We'll talk about that here in a few. But, all those top teams are going to play each other here this week. So the teams, that did get a loss, that have 1 or 2, they'll probably go see each other again. That's one part about the matchup weekend is, I try to, with 3 games, we try to get those games that, some teams are 1-1 head-to-head. And, whoever wins this tiebreaker game is going to make it, where you move up in the rankings and all that good stuff. So, Code Blue, Clinton, 2 top teams of the week, Raptors, Mayhem also. Let's go ahead and move in and let's talk about the high school division. Let's go to the stats and standings and see how everybody's lining up, and then we can talk about the matchups for this upcoming week. All right, so we're in the high school division. We got the Gunslinger division. Cherokee sitting on top, 10-3. We got Clinton sitting at 8-1. East Tennessee Wolfpack 5-2. Rocky Top 5-6. The Gooners 4-8. Loudon 3-3, and 407 at 2-7. Top three teams in this division, really. Cherokee's, Clinton, and Wolfpack. Wolfpack's just missed a couple weeks, but they're still 5-2. Only lost 2 games, racked up 5 wins. Let's go ahead and get down to our Gridiron division. Gridiron division, we got it headed up. Code Blue 7-1. You got Orange Crush at 6-6. Mayhem at 5-4. The Rising Stars have been 4-2. Goon Squad 4-5. Raptors 4-8. The Bobcats 3-7, and the Cyclones 1-8. So the way we're going to do our matchup this weekend, we should have Cherokee's, Clinton, and the Wolfpack, and then I think it's going to be Code Blue, Orange Crush, and Mayhem. So those 6 teams are going to be paired up with each other, and then we're going to have Rocky Top Gooners 407, Goon Squad, Raptors, Bobcats, Cyclones set up to play each other. So be ready to compete, have some fun with it. And, at the end of this weekend, we should have a pretty, top to bottom know who's who. So let's get over into our passing leaders. So we're at the passing leaders. Like I said, I think we've added some stats to the high school group from this past week. So we got Cherokee's Benson Brang sitting at the top of the list with 21 touchdowns. Jackson Dabrowski from the Orange Crush with 18. Will Crowley at Rocky Top with 17. The Gooners' Kai Beasley's got 15. Mayhem's lefty Keith Jones, 12 touchdowns. You got the Raptors with Reese Hatchers and Nolan Bassett and Casey McGowan. All three of those guys, got 10, tied at 10. So one guy at the top, Benson and Jackson, kind of battling it out. Cherokee's been on fire the past few weekends through, probably the two most touchdowns in the past 2 weekends for Benson. I think he had, 10 and 7 the past 2 weekends. So, having some fun, hitting full stride. Let's see if we can, Will Crowley, Jackson Dabrowski can get quite a few touchdowns in this next week. Even the Gooners, Kai Beasley's in there, kind of in the race for at least the top 2 or 3. But let's go to receiving leaders. Excuse me. Receiving leaders, we've got a fairly close race. We got the Cherokees, Reed Reynolds. He's been consistent. I think he had 4 and 4 the past couple of weeks. But Reed Reynolds, 11 touchdowns, sitting on top at number 1. Mayhem's Reed Daniels sitting with 9 touchdowns at number 2. Sean Hall and Deshaun Reynolds tied at number 3 with 6 touchdowns. Handful of guys, Tay Smith, Tay Williams, Seth Fain, and Gavin Owens tied at 5 touchdowns. And then, excuse me, I keep up. I just put all these in there since we're ending the year, just so you can kind of see how many guys have actually scored touchdowns and all that stuff. But we've got 8 players tied with 4 touchdowns, 9 tied with 3, 13 tied with 2, and 19 tied with 1. So, quite a few guys. 40 or so. Guys caught touchdowns this year. Of course, we got about 8 or 9 sitting on top with 5 or more. But so far, pretty good season for the high school group. Let's move on to the defensive leaders. Interceptions have been fairly low this year. And I guess it's a good thing. We got a lot of interception when you look at that one with 34 players tied. But, Isaiah Winfield, 4 interceptions from the Cherokees, leading the league. We got 407s, Antoine Humphrey, and East Tennessee Wolfpack's Marshall Goodner. Marshall, I don't think, has had an interception since the season started, but he got 3 up there that week 1, and it's put him right there on the top of the list. 7 players tied at 2, and then 34 players tied at 1. So, not a ton of interceptions throughout the season for the amount of games we played, but a handful of guys have been able to get in the way and get their hand on the ball and get some points for the defense. But sack leaders, this has been fun. The Cherokees sitting on top of this list also, man. Ramillion Crenshaw, 9 sacks. I was watching him play a couple weekends ago, and he's actually really good at just doing this part of the game. He's good at probably the other parts too, but he gets in there fast and gets on the boys and gets his hands up, knocks the ball down, makes some plays. But we got the Kentucky Raptors, Trip Fields, and Orange Crush's Isaiah Simmons. Both those guys are tied at 3. It looks like Ramillion's probably going to win this little award for sack leader unless one of those guys gets on fire this week and gets after it. But four guys tied at 2, 8 players tied at 1 on the sacks. And the top team in the league, is generally the guys that have the top guys in all these individual deals. So same deal. Cherokee sitting on top of this, 25 stops, playing great defense all season. Orange Crush at 15 and Cyclones at 14 on the stop. So, high school division, got that part out of the way. Like I said, going into week 6. Week 6 will be the last week that we add to our season stats. We normally don't add the tournament. We'll also next weekend talk about all the stats from the leagues past, the years past, and kind of see how these guys ranked up and compared to those guys. So anyways, let's go ahead and players of the week, high school division. All right, so for our high school division players of the week, got a couple guys with some big stats. A couple guys played a few extra games. But I'm looking at it. You got the Cherokees, Brinson Brang, had the biggest numbers. He had 7 touchdowns, 3 1-point conversions, 1 2-point conversion. But the Cherokees did play 4 games. We're going to go with Orange Crush, Fisher Newman, first time this season, Gunslinger of the week, 5 touchdowns. Pretty solid weekend for the Orange Crush. Good job. Congratulations, Fisher Newman, Gunslinger of the week. When it comes to our receivers of the week, now Brinson did throw a bunch of touchdowns. When we go to our receivers of the week, we had one guy that led everybody, and in 3 out of the 4 games, he was able to get these stats. So you got Reed Reynolds with the Cherokees, 4 touchdowns, 1 1-point conversion, and a 2-point conversion on the weekend. So on the other guys, there really wasn't many stats. A couple guys had 2 touchdowns or whatnot. So go-getter of the week, Cherokees, Reed Reynolds. Congratulations. Ball hawk of the week, rusher of the week. Wasn't many stats. Wasn't many interceptions this week, which is good. Good job, quarterbacks taking care of the football. Rushers, there was nobody on the rushers either. I think our leader, Ramillion, he had 1, but that's really not much for player of the week. So we're going to go ahead and move in. Let's talk about our varsity teams. Let's go ahead and pull up varsity teams of the week and go ahead and move into that division. So our varsity teams of the week, a lot of teams were on spring break this week. We had quite a few high school teams here, but varsity teams, I think we only had 3 teams. They round robined it, and the team that did the best was the East Tennessee Wolfpack, 2-0. I think they played the Underdogs and the Rising Stars. So congratulations, East Tennessee Wolfpack, 2-0, week 5. Let's go ahead and get to our stats and standings and see what this playoff matchup week is going to look like. All right, so with the varsity division, we've got one team. The Underdogs have been on top pretty much all season. Actually, early in the season, they started off in the middle, and then after about week 2 or 3, they kind of jumped back in there and moved their way on up. But the last few weeks, they've been at the top of the thing. They're 8-3, sitting at number 1. We got D Block, Orange Crush, and East Tennessee Wolfpack all sitting there with 5 wins. With a few head-to-head games, it kind of puts them to where they're at stat or standings-wise. Then we got We Grind, Rising Stars, and Loudon right there at the bottom. This week, it's really not going to be as much of a matchup week from top to bottom because everybody's right there together except for the Underdogs and the 2 at the bottom. But it's going to be the team. All these teams have played each other at least twice, so it's going to be more of a head-to-head, best 2 out of 3. Whoever wins this one's probably going to be, able to push themselves up to get the 2 seed or the 3 seed going into the playoffs. But, other than the standings, let's move over to the stats, and not much changed on the stats this week. So we're just going to give a quick rundown. Like I said, I don't think I added but 2 or 3 people on the stats. The Underdogs, 2 receivers and Blade Burgess. So anyways, we got passing leaders right now, Blade Burgess and Jacob Dealer sitting on top at 13 and 9. We have a handful of guys sitting there that were there from last weekend with 7, 6, and 5 and 4. Receiving leaders, Will Elder, I think added a couple touchdowns, so he's sitting there with 7. Orange Crush, Braden Bird at 5. Then we got a couple guys with 4, a couple with 3. And then we got 5 players tied at 2. Defensive leaders, got a few more interceptions this week, or not this week, but in this division than we do with the high school division. But, we got 2 guys sitting on top. One, Landergan with Regrind at 6 interceptions. We got Jaden Bolin sitting there at number 2 from the East Tennessee Wolfpack at 5. Then we got Owen Knight with 4, handful of guys with 3. Then Quincy Pigmore with 2, and 16 other guys tied with 1. Sack leaders, pretty much the same we had last week. We got Wesley Mead sitting at number 1, Bryce Fox, Noah Bell, Major Baker, all right there at 2 and 3. Nobody else really tagged with any sacks at all to put for the league at 1. Defensively, and I think this is going to be every division, but the team with the best defense has been sitting on top of the division in wins. So Underdogs 17 stops. Then we got a tie with Orange Crush and East Tennessee Wolfpack at 15, and then we got We Grind at 13. Let's go ahead and move into the varsity division players of the week. All right, so for our varsity division players of the week, really only had one team put any stats in, but they put them in, put the work in to do it. So we're going to go ahead and give a couple. So Gunslinger of the week, Underdogs, Blade Burgess, 2 touchdowns, 1 1-point conversion. Gunslinger of the week, and Grant O'Quinn, 2 TDs receiving. Underdogs, we'll go Go-Getter of the week. So Gunslinger and Go-Getter of the week from the Underdogs. You got Blade Burgess, been talking about him all season. He's had a great year. Grant O'Quinn, I think I seen him on the leaderboard, so he's working his way in there. Might even be somewhere near the top, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. But congratulations, guys. No interceptions posted, no sacks posted for the stats this week for those teams. So, if you got we're going to start giving out these autographed items next week at the end of the year to all these players of the week. So the guys that have been taking their stats, you're going to get rewarded with an opportunity at least to win a couple things and have a little bit of fun with it. Let's go ahead and move into our JV division and check out the top teams of the week. And with the JV division, we had 3 teams that played pretty well. We had 2 teams that went 2-1. We had the East Tennessee Wolfpack went 2-1. We also had another team that played in our league a couple years ago. They were a high school team and I think a varsity. This year they brought a JV team. It's called the Immortals from up in Kentucky. They were out of Virginia. Trained one of the quarterbacks from out there, J.J. Reynolds, back in the day. They were meant to bring their high school team and the JV team this time. High school team, something happened. They couldn't make the trip. But the Immortals JV team came out, went 2-1, played really good. We'll hopefully be able to check into some stats, see if they did anything great on that end. But, congratulations to Immortals and Wolfpack. But we did have one team that's been on a roll lately. Code Blue, I think this is their first 3-0 weekend, but they've been putting up a lot of stats, been going 2-1. I think they're moved their way up into the leaderboard when it comes to stats and standings also. So, congratulations, Code Blue, 3-0, top team of the week. Let's go ahead and move into it, check out the standings and the stats, and see how this thing's rolling out. All right, so the JV division, this has been one of the most fun divisions, not just watching them play, but just watching them compete. There's really competitive. Some teams, get a win, then they turn around and lose to the same team. So, a lot of head-to-head 1-on-1s throughout the season. But this weekend, we're going to get to see some really good matchups, I think, in this division. But we got the East Tennessee Wolfpack sitting at the top of it, 9-3. We got Code Blue at 7-5, Loudon 5-1, Rise 3-6, and the Crushers at 1-8. The Wolfpack, it's kind of took charge of that division, but Code Blues had some really good weekends the past couple weeks. So curious to see those guys play and how that matchup works out this weekend. Down in the Gridiron division, we have Mayhem with 8-4, underrated 8-3, both sitting there at the top with 8 wins. I think Mayhem's just got the head-to-head win against underrated over the past few weeks. Dot City 7-5, Bobcats 3-9, and D Block at 2-7. So what we'll see this weekend, we should see the Wolfpack, Code Blue, and Mayhem and underrated, and Dot City, actually. Those 5 teams will be matched up. Rise, Crushers, Bobcats, and D Block will be matched up on the other side. But Loudon had a couple good, had a couple teams in the division in the league this year that had the high school, the varsity, and the JV division, I believe. And they just played the half the season. They had so many kids missing for other sports and stuff, so they're done for the year. But Loudon did put a good run together in this division at 5-1 on the first few weeks. But should have some nice matchups this week. Should be really competitive. Let's move in. You guys have been pretty good on top of your stats also. So there may be 1 or 2 teams missing from the past week, but everything should be pretty close. So what we have right now, passing leaders, we've got, sitting at the top of the list, we got Jackson Byington, 19 touchdowns with Code Blue, having a pretty good season. Like I said, the past handful of weeks have been really good for Code Blue. So we got 3 guys tied at 13. We got Tucker Garner, Wyatt Ritchie, and Easton Nip all at 13 at second place. Then we got Jet Henry and Edward Collins at 10. Quite a few guys, finally got a handful of guys over 10. Jackson leading the way. So let's turn it in. Let's check out the receiving leaders. 2 guys sitting on the top at the receiving leaders. We got Dot City's Eli Sisk with 7 touchdowns. You got the Bobcats, Zachary Reynolds with 7 touchdowns. So 2 guys tied at first right there. Good competition there. We got Code Blue with the next 2 guys. We got Cam Wilcox and Skylar Whitson with 6 and 5. And then Hunter Yexley with Team Rise. He's also right there tied with 5. And Malachi Morgan with underrated tied at 5. In this division, this is what, 6th, 7th grade, guys should be able to catch and pass, throw and catch pretty well. But, it's still tough with the defense. And we had the rush going all year. But, we've got quite a few guys in the end zone. We've got, 5 players tied at 4, 3 players tied at 3. Then we got 12 players tied at 2, and then 14 guys tied at 1. So, nearly 40 guys in this division also have scored a touchdown, throughout the season. So it's really exciting. A lot of these guys, to be honest with you, you know how it is during the fall. There's only one guy, generally maybe 2, that really gets the ball targeted toward them.
So in this division, hopefully in 7-on-7, guys are getting, a handful more balls thrown at them during the 7-on-7 season, opportunity to catch, drop, whatever happens, but just getting those opportunities on the field, in a game time situation that they may not get in the fall. So, 7-on-7 is always great for the ballers, but it's also, I think, just as beneficial, at least the league, the way we play it, week in and week out, and try to get you enough games and that type of stuff. For the guys that are just trying to get on the field, just hoping the ball gets to them a couple times a season. But here, they can get on the field, get some catches, get some targets, and, hopefully, some of these guys are, getting in the end zone. So let's move on in. Defensive leaders. Calvin Odell with the Bobcats, 4 interceptions, sitting there by himself, number 1. We got Code Blue and Rise and Underrated, all with guys at number 2. Braden Brown, Cruz Schuler, and Brandon Zamora all tied at number 2 with 3 interceptions. But we've got 13 players tied with 2, and we got 27 guys tied with 1. So that's quite a bit of interceptions, but what do you expect in this division? Guys are just learning, but, it's been fun to watch. Let's move into the sacks. This has been a pretty good race right here for the most of the season, to be honest with you. We got Dot City. Robert Mantooth has been sitting on top all season. He's got 7. He's tied right now at number 1 with the Bobcats. Nick Fincham, he's been right there at first, second, third all season. Now he's got 7, tied at first, and then we got Marshall Eskridge with Bobcats also with 5. Eli Kane, I'm still not sure exactly where he plays, but he's got 2, and then we got 7 players tied with 1. When it comes to stops, Dot City's sitting on the top of this with 26, Code Blue at 21, Bobcats at 20, a tie at 14 with Rise and East Tennessee Wolfpack. Some of the top teams in the division are, playing the best defense, just like every other division. You got Dot City and Code Blue, 26 stops, 21 stops. Bobcats and Rise really not really up there in the wins, but got playing pretty good defense, just looking like they're just having trouble probably scoring on offense, and getting in the end zone. But, if you got something to go with, some positives is, you get some stops and making plays, and hopefully, once the playoff and this last week roll around, figure out how to, get in the end zone this last weekend and maximize your defense and can have a fun ending to this season. So the Wolfpack sitting there tied at 14 also, they're still one of the top teams. So let's go ahead and check out the players of the week for the JV division.
All right, so we're at JV players of the week. This division's been good. The JV and youth has been really good in putting in the stats. High school's been pretty good. There's enough teams in it that even though 3 or 4 of the teams aren't, we're still getting enough numbers in here. But the JV teams, we had a handful of guys made some plays, had a bunch of passes, a bunch of touchdowns. So we actually had a league high, a season high, I guess, for this division in touchdowns. So we had one guy, Dot City, Holden McMahon. He had 3 touchdowns, pretty good weekend for him. Then we had 2 other guys that had quite a few touchdowns. We had Underrated's Easton Nip, and then we also had Code Blues Jackson Byington. So both those guys had 7 touchdowns. So big weekend for those guys. Nip had 1 1-point conversion and 1 2-point conversion, and Byington ended up having 0 1-point conversions, but man, he had 5 2-point conversions. So y'all know the deal. Got to give it to the guy with the most points, most stats. They also went 3-0, so it's a pretty big weekend for them. So Code Blue, Jackson Byington, 7 touchdowns, 5 2-point conversions. Congratulations, Gunslinger of the Week for the JV division. So let's move on in. We got our go-getter of the week. Had a couple guys had big weeks for those guys. We had Malachi Morgan for Underrated, had 3 touchdowns, 1 1-point conversion, 1 2-point conversion. Dot City, Eli Sisk had 3 touchdowns and 1 1-point conversion. But we had one guy, Code Blue, 7 touchdowns, found a guy, got open. It's somebody a little different than they've been hitting. So we got Code Blue's Cam Wilcox, 4 touchdowns, and he was the guy. When it goes to conversion, I guess he's the guy they're going to. So 4 touchdowns, then they would turn around and hit him with 4 2-point conversions. So Cam Wilcox, congratulations, go getter of the week, Code Blue. So DBs, we had a couple guys had interceptions. All right, so we had Code Blue had Breed. I don't know if they spelled it right, but maybe it is. It's Braden Brown with 2 interceptions from Code Blue. We got the Bobcats, Cashton Kinney with 2 interceptions also. But we've done this a handful of times over the years. This is the first time this year, but we're going to go Ball Hawk of the Week. We're going to go with the team defense. We're going to go with the Bobcats defense. Bobcats had 7 interceptions throughout the weekend. That's quite a bit, man. Defense played great. they were out there making plays. They had a handful of guys had one, 3 or 4 guys with one interception. So we're going to go with Bobcats defense. Congratulations, ball hawk of the week. When it comes to rusher for the JV guys, we didn't have any sacks set up, so it means quarterbacks are getting the ball out. So congratulations to those guys moving around, getting the ball out, making plays. Let's go ahead and kick it on over. Let's go to our youth division. All right, so our youth division, we had 2 teams that played really well. We had the Kentucky Raptors, 2-1 on the weekend. They've been pretty consistent all year, top team in the league. We also had SOP boys. Okay, SOP boys have had a couple good weeks putting a run in to push themselves up to the top of the rank. The SOP boys went 3-0 this weekend. Put it together, had a great weekend, put some numbers together. So let's go ahead and check out the stats and standings for the youth division.
So I think we're going to have a good finish in this youth division. We got one team right now, Kentucky Raptors, 9-3. We keep talking about the quarterback consistently on the players of the week each week. When you got a guy that's throwing touchdowns consistently, it's hard to lose in this division. But they're sitting there at 9-3 right now, 238 points scored, only allowed 102, so you can tell they're playing defense. But Raptors sitting at number 1. We got Team Rise and TD Factory both tied 7-2. I think Rise has a heads up on the head-to-head against TD Factory, so I'm sure we'll see them compete again this weekend to kind of get a tiebreaker out of that, or see who's 2 out of 3. SOP boys have made a good run, 3-0 this past weekend. Put them at 6-6, separate them a little bit, put them in that top of the bracket there. And then we have Goon Squad 2-4, D Block 2-7, and Code Blue at 1-11. So this division is going to be fun to watch. I think sometimes when teams get started in this, they're really not sure how to do it. The kids are just learning. So, 8 weekends in a row is almost just like getting consistent training, because I'm sure most of them have been practicing. So hopefully we just see progress, from all the guys from top to bottom, and see if we can get, a little continued success, later on when we call players of the week. I know there's a few new names, I think, that pop up on that. So, and as we look into the league leaders, which we'll go ahead and go to right now, you'll see that, quite a few players have made some plays in this division. But, into the passing leaders, we do have one guy sitting there, 27 touchdowns, heads and shoulders above everybody right now. His team's 9-3. You got Kentucky Raptors, Case and Harrell, first place right now in the passing leaders. Then you got sitting there at number 2, we got Rise's Hudson Howard with 17 touchdowns, which was really heads and shoulders above the rest of the competition. So we got 2 guys that are really having big seasons. Got Rise Hall with TD Factory sitting with 8 touchdowns, Kendall Allen and Jace Hawkins from SOP Boys with 7 and 5. So quarterbacks, a couple of those guys have big seasons. All of them can throw the ball. I've seen them on the highlights, over throughout the season or whatnot. So let's move on down. Receiving leaders. Kind of the same deal. We got one guy sitting at the top, Crew Schuler. Been talking about him pretty much, every week at some point throughout the little podcast. Sitting there at number 1, 10 tugs. Been there all season. But we've got 2 guys sitting at number 2 with the Raptors. We've been talking about the Raptors, right? Knowing how many they're going to have just back to back to back to back. But they've distributed the ball really well. Maverick Jones, Kai French, both have 6 touchdowns. Koa Sanders has 5 touchdowns. SOP Boys, Aries Johnson got up in there and got 4 touchdowns. Then you got the Raptors again, Colton Brumley with 4 touchdowns. Then with the league, we got 3 players tied with 3 more tied with 2, and then 12 other guys tied at 1. So quite a few guys getting in the end zone. We got 4 guys, 5 or more. 1 guy sitting at 10. So receivers, look forward to seeing you guys finish this week 6 out and see who finishes this on top and breaks those little tiebreakers with Maverick, Kai, and Koa. You guys are pretty much, whoever gets the next 2 touchdowns is going to win it between you, the Kentucky Raptors team. But defensive leaders, we can slide on over there. SOP Boys, both these guys had big weeks this past weekend. Jace Hawkins, Aries Johnson, both of them, like I said, big weekend this past weekend. Both of them sitting at number 1, 5 interceptions. Good luck to whoever can get, take over the lead for this one for Defensive Player of the Year, Ball Hawk of the Year for this division. But also Rise's Crew Schuler has 3, and he's probably not impossible to get 2 to 3 himself, in this last weekend. So, anyways, with the league play, we've got 3 players tied at 2, and then we've got 13 guys tied at 1 in interceptions. So, solid race right here. A lot of the divisions don't have a good race in these, but the youth division's a solid race in the top 1, 2, and 3 for the most part. Let's go on down. We got our sack leaders. This is not a race. This is the only guy that's really got any stats for this, and that's SOP boys. They turned in Jeremiah Brewer, 1 sack. When it comes to stops, now we got the Raptors sitting with 24 stops, and we're tied at 21 stops with TD Factory and Team Rise. So that's our stats for our league leaders for our youth division. Let's go into players of the week.
All right, so when it comes to our players of the week in the youth division, we're going to go quarterbacks. Gunslingers of the week, we had 2 guys that had decent stats. We had the SOP boys, had a great weekend. Kendall Allen led them to 3-0, but ended up with 4 touchdowns. No conversions stat listed, so 4 touchdowns for Kendall Allen. And, the Raptors, keep making plays. They're being big on offense all year. They were pretty good last year, and you can see the growth. And that's the fun part about watching these teams. I got to see little Case and Harrell play last year and then getting to see them this year. A lot of growth in the way they play, making the throws, just getting bigger, stronger, and all that good stuff. So anyways, Raptors, Case and Harrell, 5 touchdowns, 4 one-point conversions, 2 and 1 on the weekend. So congratulations, Gunslinger of the Week. Out of those 5 touchdowns, we had 1 guy, Kai French from the Kentucky Raptors, catch 2 touchdowns. So the only stats I saw with anybody with 2 touchdowns on the receiving leaders. So go-getter of the week, Kentucky Raptors, Kai French. Congratulations. DB, ball hawk of the week. We had a handful of interceptions. All right, something else we've also done over the years. So interception-wise, we got the Kentucky Raptors, Colton Brumley with 2 interceptions. But we also have 2 other guys with 2 interceptions. SOP boys, Jace Hawkins. SOP boys, Aries Johnson, 2 interceptions each. So we're going to go with the SOP boys, combine them up, had 4 interceptions together, helped lead the team 3-0 in their first weekend undefeated. Jace Hawkins, Aries Johnson, congratulations. Ball hawk of the week with 2 interceptions each. Rushers, I think we've added the rush, but it doesn't seem like we're getting many stats on the rush. So hopefully, young quarterbacks, you guys are used to it. Your life is catch the ball and get the heck out of the way, no matter how coach drew it up. Most of the time it's catch the ball and run. Sometimes you get lucky and get to hit that 1-step throw, maybe left-right hitch and throw. But other than that, congratulations, players of the week for our youth team. Ending the week, we're going into week 6. We're going to be at Anderson County. We're going to be at Clinton. We kind of got those fields locked down, to finalize this thing out. That's where we were at last year. It's always fun when people open the doors to you and welcome you and want you there. So, we appreciate both of those communities and bringing us out each week and giving us the opportunity to play the game. Other than that, week 6 is going to be a big week. It's going to be competitive. Come on out, have some fun with us, and see you Sunday.